The emergency sirens had been silent for 50 years on Verdana, 7. When they finally screamed to life, nobody remembered what they meant. Dr. Amara Okonjo dropped her research tablet and ran to the nearest window. Across the golden wheat fields that humans and aliens had planted together, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Dust clouds, massive ones, moving fast toward the colony. All residents report to the central plaza immediately. The announcement system crackled. This is not a drill. Within 20 minutes, 2,000 colonists gathered under the pale green sky. Governor Tessic, a four-armed Bandari with silver fur, stood on the platform with Ambassador Yulin, a tall and thin Peloran whose blue skin had turned almost white with fear. The Kreth Dominion has declared this planet forfeit, Governor Tessic announced. His four hands trembled as he held the tablet containing the message. Their war riders will arrive at dawn tomorrow. They number 500. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Kreth were known across the galaxy as brutal conquerors. But their war riders were something worse. They rode into battle on creatures called Shrike Beasts, 12 feet tall monsters with armored skin and claws that dripped venom. No planetary defense had ever stopped a Kreth cavalry charge. Galactic Union reinforcements are 8 days away, Ambassador Yulin said, her voice shaking. We must evacuate who we can. The transport ships can carry perhaps 300 people. And the rest? Someone shouted from the crowd. The ambassador had no answer. Rena Halstead pushed her way to the front. She was the colony's security chief, a tall woman with dark skin and gray streaks in her braided hair. Before coming to Verdana, 7, she had spent 20 years as a wildlife ranger in the African preserves back on Earth. How many weapons do we have? She asked. Governor Tessic checked his tablet. 47 standard rifles, 12 pulse cannons, no heavy artillery, against 500 mounted warriors. Rena shook her head. We cannot win a shooting fight. Then we evacuate, the ambassador insisted. We save who we can. No. Rena's voice cut through the panic like a knife. Nobody gets left behind. She turned and looked toward the eastern hills. Everyone followed her gaze. There, watching the colony as they always did, stood the storm runners. Six-legged creatures that looked like someone had combined a wolf with a horse and then made it twice as large. Their fur shifted colors with their moods, and right now it was the deep red of hunting mode. The storm runners were the colony's greatest problem. In 3 years, they had killed 17 people. They attacked supply convoys. They destroyed equipment. Every alien species that had tried to tame them over 600 years had failed. The Galactic Union classified them as Category 9 untamable, the highest danger rating possible. Ms. Halstead, Governor Tessic said slowly, "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking," Rena said, "that we have 47 potential cavalry mounts watching us right now." Silence. Then Ambassador Yulin laughed, a high and nervous sound. "You cannot be serious. Storm runners have killed more tamers than any creature in recorded history. 14 species have tried. All failed. 14 alien species," Rena corrected. "No human has ever tried." Dr. Okonjo stepped forward. She had studied the storm runners since arriving on Verdana, 7. She knew their behavior better than anyone. The previous attempts all used standard galactic protocols. Dominance displays, neural collars, chemical sedation. The storm runners rejected all of it. "Because those methods are stupid," Rena said bluntly. Several aliens gasped at her language. "You cannot force a predator to respect you. You have to earn it. Earn the respect of a Category 9 predator." Governor Tessic's forearms crossed in disbelief. "In one night." Rena smiled. It was not a comforting smile. "My ancestors domesticated wolves. They rode horses into battle. They kept lions as companions and eagles as hunting partners. Humans have been earning the respect of predators since before we had fire." A young man stepped out of the crowd. He was maybe 22 years old, with sunburned skin and calloused hands. "A farmer. My grandfather broke wild mustangs back on Earth," he said. "I'm volunteering." His name was Danny Reeves, and he had no idea that he was about to change galactic history. More humans stepped forward. 23 in total. They ranged from teenagers to grandparents. Scientists and farmers and engineers. All of them had one thing in common. They understood animals in a way that no alien species seemed to grasp. "You are volunteering to die," Ambassador Yulin whispered. Danny grinned at her. Ma'am, with respect, you don't know humans very well. As the suns began to set on Verdana, 7, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the 23 volunteers gathered their supplies. Rope, dried meat, water, no weapons, no restraints, no technology. The aliens watched them march toward the Storm Runner territory with expressions of horror and grief. They were already composing memorial messages in their heads. Rena Halstead walked at the front of the group. Behind her, the colony's lights flickered on against the growing darkness. Ahead, in the hills, she could see the Storm Runners watching, waiting. Remember, she told her volunteers, we are not going to fight them. We are not going to dominate them. We are going to show them what we are and let them decide if they want to join us. And if they decide to eat us instead? Danny asked. Rena kept walking. Then we die trying something nobody else had the courage to attempt. The aliens recorded everything. They believed they were documenting humanity's final foolish hours. They were wrong. Nobody had ever walked willingly into Storm Runner territory before. The creatures watched from the ridgeline, their fur cycling through shades of red and orange. Hunting colors. Warning colors. Rena raised her hand, and the group stopped. They were close enough now to see individual animals. The pack numbered 47 adults and 12 juveniles. At the center stood the alpha, a massive female with scars across her muzzle and one torn ear. The colonists had named her Old Gray because of the silver patches in her fur. Old Gray had earned those scars killing Kreth scouts 10 years ago. She was the reason the Kreth had never tried to claim this planet before now. What do we do? Danny whispered. We sit down, Rena said. We what? Sit down. Rena lowered herself to the grass and crossed her legs. Around her, the other humans did the same. 23 people sitting in a loose circle in the middle of predator territory. Back at the colony, Ambassador Yulin watched through surveillance drones. They have stopped moving. They are just sitting there. Perhaps they are praying, Governor Tessick suggested. Humans do not pray like that. I think they have lost their minds. Dr. Okonjo sat near Rena, her heart pounding but her hands steady. She had spent 3 years studying these creatures from a safe distance. Now she was close enough to smell them, a musky scent like wet earth and copper. The galactic protocols treat predators like machines, she said quietly, recording notes on her tablet. Input dominance, output obedience. But storm runners are not machines. They are intelligent. They read intent. They understand threat and opportunity. So what are we showing them? Danny asked. That we are not a threat. That we are not afraid. That we are choosing to be here. Rena reached into her pack and pulled out strips of dried meat. She ate one slowly, then tossed another toward the nearest storm runner, a young male with bright orange fur. The creature sniffed the air but did not approach. An hour passed. Then 2. The storm runners watched but did not attack. Some lay down. Others groomed each other. The tension in the air began to fade, replaced by something that felt almost like curiosity. This is remarkable, Dr. Okonjo breathed into her recorder. They are treating us like we are part of the landscape, like we belong here. Danny felt something brush against his back and nearly jumped out of his skin. A juvenile storm runner, barely larger than a big dog, had crept up behind him. Its fur was pale blue, the color of caution rather than aggression. It sniffed his hair, his shoulder, his hand. Every drone watching transmitted the same image. Every alien in the colony held their breath. Danny remembered what his grandfather had taught him about horses. Never show fear. Never make sudden moves. Let them come to you. He slowly turned his palm upward, offering rather than grabbing. The juvenile sniffed his palm for a long moment. Then, impossibly, it lay down beside him, pressing its warm flank against his leg. Oh my gods, Ambassador Yulin whispered. It is not killing him. It is accepting him, Governor Tessick said, his 4 arms hanging limp with shock. I have never seen anything like this. More storm runners began approaching the human circle. They moved cautiously, sniffing and testing, but none of them attacked. One older female settled near Dr. Okonjo. A pair of young males circled the group, their fur shifting from red to orange to yellow to blue. Rena stayed still, watching Old Gray. The alpha had not moved from her position on the ridge. Her eyes, golden and ancient, studied the human leader with an intelligence that was almost frightening. Come on, Rena whispered. I know you are curious. I know you are tired of being alone up there. Hours passed. The moons rose over Verdana, 7, casting silver light across the plains. The humans talked quietly among themselves, shared food and water, laughed at soft jokes. They treated the night like a camping trip rather than a death sentence. The storm runners had never seen behavior like this. Every other species that entered their territory came with weapons and restraints, with fear and aggression. These strange two-legged creatures came with food and patience, and something the storm runners could sense, but not name, trust, midnight. Old Gray finally moved. She walked down from the ridge with slow, deliberate steps. The other storm runners parted to let her pass. She stopped in front of Rena Halstead and stared down at the human woman. Rena did not look away. She did not flinch. She met the Alpha's gaze with calm respect, one leader to another. "I know what you are," Rena said softly. "You are a protector, a mother, a warrior. You have fought alone your whole life because nobody was worthy of fighting beside you." Old Gray's ears twitched. "Tomorrow, enemies are coming. Enemies you have faced before. They want to take this land, kill these people, destroy everything we have built." Rena slowly raised her hand, palm open. "I am asking you to fight with us. Not for us. With us." The Alpha leaned forward and pressed her scarred muzzle against Rena's palm. Across the colony, aliens watched their screens in stunned silence. Ambassador Yulin reached for her communication device with trembling fingers. She had to report this to the Galactic Union. She had to tell them what she was witnessing. "The humans are not taming them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are joining them." Dawn was 5 hours away, and everything had changed. The third moon had risen when the real work began. Old Gray had accepted Rena, but acceptance was not the same as partnership. The humans still had to learn how to ride creatures that had never been ridden before. Danny stood beside the juvenile that had chosen him, a young male with fur that shifted between blue and silver. "So how exactly do we do this?" he asked. "Do I just climb on?" "No saddles," Rena said. She was running her hands along Old Gray's neck, learning the shape of muscle and bone. "No bridles, no reins. If we try to control them like machines, we lose everything we have built tonight." Dr. Okonjo watched the interaction with scientific fascination. The storm runners communicate through body language and scent. They can feel your emotional state through skin contact. If you are nervous, they know. If you are confident, they know. "Great," Danny muttered. "So I just have to not be terrified while climbing onto a predator that could eat me in 3 bites." His storm runner made a sound that might have been laughter. One by one, the humans began forming deeper bonds with their new partners. An elderly woman named Grace found connection with a scarred female who had lost part of her tail to a Kreth trap. A teenage boy named Paolo bonded with a young male barely out of adolescence. Both of them nervous and eager and full of wild energy. The process was different for each pair. Some humans sang softly. Others talked endlessly about nothing important. A few simply sat in silence, communicating through touch and presence alone. Rena was the first to mount. She placed her hands on Old Gray's shoulders and waited. The Alpha lowered herself slightly, an invitation. Rena swung her leg over and settled onto the broad back, her fingers gripping the thick fur. Old Gray stood. Rena was suddenly 3 meters off the ground, looking down at her fellow humans and their partners. The feeling was indescribable. She could feel Old Gray's heartbeat through her legs, feel the muscles shifting beneath her, feel a connection that went deeper than physical contact. "She is not just letting me ride," Rena said, her voice filled with wonder. "She is showing me how to move with her." The night became a training ground. Storm runners carried their human partners in slow circles, teaching them balance and rhythm. When Danny finally climbed onto his young male, he nearly fell off 3 times before finding his center. "Lean into the turns," Dr. Okonjo called out. She was riding her own partner, an older female she had named Dusty for the tan color of her fur. "They know where they are going. Your job is just to stay with them." By the 4th hour, the humans were moving faster. They rode in formation, the storm runners naturally falling into pack patterns with their riders as part of the unit. It was nothing like riding horses. There were no commands, no directions. The humans thought, and the storm runners responded. "This should not be possible," Governor Tessick said, watching the feed from the colony. "They have been riding for hours without a single fall or injury. The storm runners are protecting them," Ambassador Yulin observed. Look at how they adjust when a rider shifts weight. They are anticipating mistakes and correcting for them. Back on the plains, Rena called her riders together. The twin suns would rise in 2 hours. The Kreth would arrive shortly after. We are not soldiers, she told them. Most of us have never been in a fight. But we have something the Kreth do not have. Terror-inducing predator mounts. Danny suggested. Rena smiled. Partnership. The Kreth control their shrike beasts with neural collars that override the creature's own instincts. Those animals fight because they have no choice. Our partners fight because they choose to. Old Gray stamped her feet and howled. The other storm runners answered, a chorus of voices that echoed across the valley. It was not a sound of challenge. It was a sound of belonging. The aliens in the colony heard it and felt their skin prickle with ancient fear. These creatures had been the terror of Verdana, 7 for generations. Now they were singing together, united with humans in a bond that defied everything the galaxy understood about predator-prey relationships. Dr. Okonjo rode up beside Rena. The pack has accepted us completely. I have been monitoring their chemical signals. They are producing bonding hormones at levels I have never recorded before. They needed us, Rena said quietly. They have been alone for so long, surrounded by species that only wanted to use them or destroy them. They were waiting for someone who would see them as equals. And we needed them, Dr. Okonjo added. On the eastern horizon, the sky began to lighten. Somewhere beyond that glow, 500 Kreth warriors were preparing for what they thought would be an easy slaughter. Rena Halstead straightened her spine and looked at her riders. 23 humans on 23 storm runners, ready to defend a colony that had given up hope. Remember why we are doing this, she said. 2,000 people are counting on us. Every one of them matters. Old Gray turned toward the rising suns, her fur shifting to the deep red of battle readiness. Rena felt the change in the Alpha's muscles, the tension building like a coiled spring. Here they come, Danny said, pointing at the dust cloud growing on the horizon. The Kreth War riders had arrived, and they were about to discover that the hunt had new hunters. Commander Voss had conquered 40 planets for the Kreth Dominion. He had led cavalry charges through fortified cities and across frozen wastelands. He had never known defeat, and he did not expect to know it today. His army crested the final ridge as the twin suns broke the horizon. 500 war riders on their massive shrike beasts, armored and venomous and trained for slaughter. The agricultural colony below should have been preparing surrender terms. Instead, his tactical officer grabbed his arm with trembling claws. Commander, look. Voss raised his viewing scope and felt his blood turn cold. Between his army and the colony stood a battle line of storm runners. The creatures that had killed his scouts a decade ago. The untamable terrors that every civilized species feared. And riding on their backs were humans. Impossible, Voss hissed. This is some kind of trick. Those beasts cannot be controlled. They are not being controlled, sir. His officer's voice cracked with fear. There are no collars. No restraints. The creatures are standing freely. Voss studied the human riders through his scope. They sat without saddles, their hands resting casually on their partners' necks. At the center of the line, a dark-skinned human woman rode the largest storm runner he had ever seen, a scarred female with the bearing of a war leader. That is Old Gray, his officer whispered. The one that killed Captain Krull and his entire squad. Voss remembered. It had taken a full platoon to drive the creature away, and even then she had escaped without serious injury. Now she stood calm beneath a human rider, her golden eyes fixed on the Kreth army with unmistakable intelligence. The single human rider broke from the line and approached. It was the woman on Old Gray. She stopped halfway between the two forces and raised her voice. I am Rena Halstead, Security Chief of Verdana, 7. You have one chance to withdraw your forces and leave this system. Take it. Voss laughed. The sound echoed across the plain, picked up and amplified by the other warriors who did not understand what they were seeing. One woman threatens 500 war riders, Voss called back. You have courage, human. But courage does not win battles. Numbers win battles. Power wins battles. Is that so? Rena tilted her head. Then let me show you something about power. She made no visible signal. No command was given. But Old Gray threw back her head and howled, a sound that seemed to shake the very air. 22 other storm runners answered. their voices rising in a chorus that spoke of ancient hunts and merciless purpose. Several shrike beasts shifted nervously beneath their creth riders. The neural collars flickered as the creatures tried to respond to their own instincts. Your animals are slaves, Rena said. They fight because they must. Ours fight because they choose to. Do you understand the difference? Voss understood. He just did not care. Kill her, he ordered. Kill them all. The first wave of creth cavalry charged down the slope. 50 warriors on their massive mounts, confident in their training and their numbers. Rena did not retreat. She did not give orders. She simply leaned forward, and Old Gray exploded into motion. The storm runner moved like lightning made flesh. One moment she was standing still, the next she was among the creth, her 6 legs propelling her with impossible speed. Her claws found gaps in armor. Her teeth found throats. Rena clung to her back and watched her partner do what she had been born to do. The other human riders followed. They did not fight in rigid formations like the creth. They moved as a pack, flowing around obstacles, supporting each other, striking from unexpected angles. Each storm runner knew where its packmates were. Each rider trusted their partner completely. Danny Reeves found himself facing a creth warrior twice his size. The alien raised a blade to strike. Before the blow could fall, Danny's storm runner lunged sideways and knocked the shrike beast off balance. The creth tumbled from his saddle, and Danny did not look back. Doctor Okonjo rode through the chaos with scientific precision, noting weak points in creth armor, calling out observations to her packmates. Dusty responded to her thoughts like they were one creature with 2 minds. The first wave broke within minutes. The creth had trained for battles against terrified infantry, not coordinated predator packs. Their shrike beasts, controlled by collars rather than loyalty, fought without passion or creativity. Commander Voss watched from the ridge as his elite warriors scattered like frightened prey. He finally understood what he was facing. This was not a battle between armies. This was a battle between 2 kinds of bond. Full charge, he commanded. All forces. Overwhelm them with numbers. 450 remaining war riders began to move. The ground shook beneath their weight. The sky seemed to darken with the dust they raised. Rena looked at the wave of death approaching and felt Old Gray's muscles tense beneath her. The Alpha was not afraid. She was eager. With me, Rena shouted to her riders. 23 humans and 23 storm runners charged directly into an army that outnumbered them 20 to 1. And somehow, impossibly, they were smiling. The 2 forces collided in a thunderstorm of claws and steel. The shrike beasts had size and armor. The storm runners had speed and coordination. For a long moment, the outcome hung in the balance. Then the storm runners demonstrated why 14 species had failed to tame them. They did not fight like individual animals. They fought like a single organism with 46 bodies and 23 human minds guiding them. When one creth warrior attacked from the left, a storm runner appeared on his right. When a shrike beast tried to flee, 2 more pack members cut off its escape. Danny found himself in the thick of the fighting. His storm runner, the young male he had silently named Bolt, moved beneath him like flowing water. A creth lance thrust toward his chest. Bolt twisted sideways, and the weapon passed through empty air. Danny grabbed the shaft and yanked, pulling the warrior off balance. Bolt finished the work with his claws. Stay together. Rena's voice carried across the battlefield. Watch each other. Protect the pack. The humans had no military training. What they had was something older and deeper. They had 10,000 years of partnership with predators encoded in their instincts. They knew how packs worked. They knew how to trust without words. Dr. Okonjo rode beside Grace, the elderly woman who had bonded with the scarred female. A group of creth warriors had isolated them, cutting them off from the main pack. 5 against 2. Dusty, Okonjo whispered to her partner. Together, the storm runners did not need more instruction. They pressed their flanks together and turned to face the attackers. When the creth charged, both creatures leaped in opposite directions, confusing the shrike beasts and opening gaps in the enemy formation. Okonjo and Grace broke through the circle and rejoined the pack. Commander Voss watched his army fall apart. His warriors were not being defeated by superior numbers or weapons. They were being outthought. Every tactic he tried, the humans and storm runners countered. Every formation he ordered, they dissolved into chaos. His shrike beast sensed his frustration and shifted beneath him, straining against the neural collar. The creature wanted to flee. Every instinct screamed that these storm runners were the apex predators of this world, and that challenging them meant death. Hold formation, Voss commanded, sending the override signal through the collar. The beast obeyed, but its movements became sluggish and reluctant. Forced obedience was no match for willing partnership. Across the battlefield, Danny was knocked from Bolt's back by a glancing blow. He hit the ground hard, the breath driven from his lungs. 3 Kreth warriors immediately turned toward him, seeing easy prey. Bolt did not run. The young storm runner spun and placed himself between Danny and the attackers. His fur blazed bright red, the color of absolute fury. He snarled with a sound that made the shrike beasts flinch. Bolt, no. Danny gasped, struggling to his feet. You will be killed. The storm runner ignored him. He charged the 3 warriors alone, moving so fast that the Kreth could not track him. His claws found joints in armor. His teeth found exposed flesh. 2 warriors fell before the 3rd managed to retreat. Bolt returned to Danny and nuzzled his shoulder, checking for injuries. Danny threw his arms around the creature's neck. You saved me, he said. You could have run, but you saved me. Bolt made a soft sound and lowered himself so Danny could climb back on. The bond between them had grown stronger in that moment. They were no longer rider and mount. They were family. Rena saw the exchange from across the battlefield and felt her heart swell. This was what the aliens could not understand. This was what made humans different. They did not tame predators. They made brothers of them. Old Gray howled, and the Storm Runner pack responded with renewed fury. They pushed into the center of the Kreth formation, targeting officers and communication equipment. Without coordination, the War Riders became individuals instead of an army. Commander Voss found himself face to face with Rena Halstead and Old Gray. His shrike beast, despite the collar's commands, refused to attack. It remembered this Storm Runner. It remembered the pain and fear of their last encounter. Your army is broken, Rena said calmly. Your beasts know they are outmatched. This battle is over. Voss looked across the field. His warriors were scattering. His beasts were fighting their collars rather than their enemies. The humans had not just defeated his cavalry. They had shown his creatures that a different kind of life was possible. He raised his communication device. All forces retreat. Withdraw to the landing zone. The Kreth fled. The creatures they had enslaved for generations fled with them, though some ran in different directions, following instincts long suppressed by neural control. The Battle of Verdana Plains was over. 23 humans and their partners had defeated an army of 500, but they had done more than win a battle. They had proven something that would change the galaxy forever. 3 months after the Battle of Verdana Plains, Ambassador Yulin stood before the Galactic Union High Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from over 200 species, all waiting to hear about the incident that had spread across every news network in known space. The footage you are about to see has been verified by 17 independent sources, Yulin began. It is not fabricated or enhanced. What happened on Verdana 7 represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of human capabilities. The screens lit up with images from that night. 23 humans walking into Storm Runner territory. The hours of patient waiting. The first contact between Danny Reeves and his juvenile partner. Old Gray pressing her muzzle into Rena's palm. Then the battle. The council watched in silence as humans rode creatures classified as impossible to tame into combat against overwhelming odds. They watched the pack tactics, the seamless coordination, the absolute trust between rider and mount. When the footage ended, the chamber erupted in questions. How did they accomplish this in a single night? What technologies did they use? Can this process be replicated by other species? Yulin raised her hand for silence. The humans used no technology, no neural interfaces, no chemical agents. They used something far more effective. She paused. They used patience, respect, and the willingness to be vulnerable. On Verdana 7, life had changed for everyone. The Storm Runners had not returned to the wild after the battle. They had integrated into the colony, forming bonds not just with humans, but with aliens who learned to approach them properly. Dr. Okonjo had established the Interspecies Bonding Research Center in the Eastern Hills. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study her methods. Most left frustrated, unable to replicate what the humans did naturally. You cannot force it, Okonjo explained to a particularly confused Peloran researcher. You have to genuinely want to connect. You have to see the creature as an equal, not a resource. Most species cannot do that. But humans can. Humans have been doing it for 10,000 years. We do not think about it. It is just how we relate to other creatures. Rena Halstead still lived in the colony, though her role had changed. She was no longer just the security chief. She was the liaison between humans, aliens, and storm runners, helping different species learn to communicate. Old Gray never left her side. The Alpha had found something she had never expected, a partner who matched her strength and understood her needs. They patrolled the colony borders together, not as guard in territory, but as friends enjoying the morning air. Danny Reeves had become something of a celebrity. The image of him hugging Bolt after being saved from the Kreth warriors had spread across the galaxy. He received interview requests from hundreds of news networks. He turned them all down. I did not do anything special, he told Governor Tessick when the administrator tried to convince him to speak publicly. I just did what my grandfather taught me. You cannot make an animal trust you. You have to earn it. That is precisely what makes it special, Tessick replied. For most species, such trust is impossible. The wider implications took longer to emerge. The Kreth Dominion sued for peace within a month, their cavalry tactics useless against colonies that might have human-bonded creatures. Other aggressive empires took notice. The galaxy was full of dangerous animals that previous civilizations had written off as untamable. Humans began receiving requests from dozens of worlds. Could they help bond with the species? Could they teach that technique? Could they show others how to earn trust instead of demanding obedience? Not every attempt succeeded. Some humans lacked the patience. Some creatures were too damaged by previous treatment to trust anyone. But enough partnerships formed to prove that Verdana 7 was not an anomaly. At the closing ceremony of the Galactic Union Summit, Ambassador Eulin delivered her conclusion. We classified humans as adaptable, resilient, and occasionally reckless. We noted their unusual history of coexisting with predators. We did not understand what this meant. She looked directly into the recording devices, knowing that trillions of beings would see her words. Humans do not conquer the wild. They do not dominate nature. They invite it into their homes, their families, their hearts. And somehow, impossibly, the wild accepts. On Verdana 7, Rena Halstead rode Old Gray across the golden plains as the twin suns set. Behind her, a mixed group of humans and storm runners moved together, their bonds visible in every gesture and glance. They were no longer separate species sharing a planet. They were pack, and across the galaxy, other creatures who had been alone for far too long began to wonder if someone might come to sit with them, to offer food and patience, to see them as equals. The humans were spreading, and wherever they went, they brought something no other species could offer. They brought the gift of being truly, genuinely, unconditionally accepted. That was worth more than any weapon ever forged.